I love that testimony of that gentleman over there on the end. He was so excited he couldn't stop telling about all the things the Hallelujah Diet had done for him. I can't stop telling it either. I could have retired years ago, but how can you stop sharing a message that's bringing health to those hearers that apply it? It is so sad that so many Christians today never fulfill the ministry that God gave them because they don't take care of the physical body that God gave them. And this is the temple. This is the temple. And my friends, I don't care how spiritual you are, if you don't take care of your physical temple, my friends, it will fail you. And you'll never be able to fulfill the ministry that God has for you because your physical body, your physical temple fails you. Long before God would like to have you finish your experience here and your ministry here on earth. You say, are there any experiments that have ever been done to prove what you're sharing with us today? One of the greatest, there's been a number of them, but one of the greatest ones I'm aware of was done by a Dr. Pottenger in the late 1930s and early 1940s. And Dr. Pottenger took 900 cats, and he fed them the identical diet for 9 years. Only Dr. Pottenger divided these cats into two groups. One group, he fed the food raw, and the other group, he fed the same food, only cooked. Now, the group that got the food raw over the entire 9-year duration of the experiment never suffered any physical breakdown or birthing defects. But the group that got the same food, only in its cooked form, developed heart disease, cancer, kidney and thyroid disease, pneumonia, paralysis, loss of teeth, arthritis, birthing difficulties, diminished sexual interest, diarrhea, irritability, liver problems, osteoporosis, and more. The same problems common in our human cooked food culture. But the experiment produced other things. The first generation of kittens from cats fed cooked food were sick and abnormal. The second generation were often born diseased or dead. And by the third generation, the mothers were sterile. And by the way, I read that without glasses. Pretty fine print. I want you to notice something here, something that you may not be aware of. When I started holding these nutritional lectures 13 years ago, there was a statistic available at that time that I repeated for many years. That was this, that the percentage of young adults that cannot produce a baby is approximately 25%. Recently, I just heard a new statistic that the percentage of young adults that cannot produce a baby has now risen to 42%. You say, why? Well, in this cat experiment, if you noticed, when these cats first started their totally cooked food diet, they were producing healthy kittens. But in 3 generations, 3 years to a cat generation, on totally cooked food, they went from producing healthy kittens to not being able to reproduce. It takes 30 years for a human generation, or 90 years to reproduce in the humans what this cat experiment produced in 9 years. And these cats, we saw how their ability to reproduce deteriorated and deteriorated, deteriorated until in 3 generations they weren't able to reproduce. The standard American diet is almost a totally 100% cooked food diet. There are some people that go weeks without a single piece of raw food. And so what we are experiencing in our human race, my friends, is the exact thing that Dr. Pottenger saw with these cats. And if we've gone from 25% unable to reproduce 13 years ago to 42% not being able to reproduce today, where are we heading if we don't get some living food back into these living bodies that God has given us? But there's something else I thought was real interesting. The longer the cats were on the cooked food diet, the sooner the physical breakdowns originated in their offspring. Now, when I was a kid, back during Depression days, the only people that I knew of that had arthritis were the great-grandpas that walked around with a cane. My friends, today, juvenile arthritis is sweeping this land. The only people I used to know that had diabetes were the old people. Today, my friend, juvenile diabetes is sweeping the young people of America. It used to be that the people that got cancer were the old people. Are you aware that the #1 cause of death among the youth of America after accidents is cancer today? What I'm talking to you about today is not a diet just for sick people or just for old people. This is a diet for all of God's creation, from the cradle to the grave, and actually pre-cradle. Here's something also interesting. We have found that if a young couple that want to have a baby will get on this living foods diet at least 6 months prior to conception, that this diet can actually repair damaged DNA. You talk about something exciting, that the physical body can actually repair broken down DNA so that that young couple can give that baby the very best start with a physical body.